Autumn Smells Like Jasmine, a love story about finding happiness. After 6 die Chapter 1. The woman by the lake, Elena, was 67 years old when she finally admitted something she had been hiding from herself. She was lonely. Not the kind of loneliness that disappears with a phone call. Not the kind that fades after a busy afternoon. This was the kind that settled into the walls of a house and stayed there. 7 years had passed since her husband, Michael, died. 7 years since the hospital room. 7 years since the silence began. The house by the lake looked exactly the same. The blue curtains still hung in the kitchen. His favorite coffee mug still stood on the shelf. His reading glasses still rested in the drawer beside their bed. 4 years. She couldn't move them. Removing them felt like erasing him. So she left everything untouched. As if one day he might walk through the front door and ask where his glasses were. The evenings were always the hardest. She would sit on the wooden porch overlooking the lake. The water reflected the sky like a giant mirror. Sometimes the sunsets were so beautiful they hurt, because beauty was meant to be shared, and she had nobody beside her. Her son lived in Toronto. Her daughter lived in Munich. They loved her. She knew that. They called every week. They sent pictures of grandchildren. Birthday cards, Christmas gifts, but photographs couldn't hug her. Video calls couldn't fill the empty chair at dinner. One autumn evening, while orange leaves drifted across the lake, Elena whispered something she had never dared say aloud. "I'm tired of being alone." The wind carried the words away, but somehow fate heard them, and fate was already preparing an answer. Chapter to the man who stopped being a Vingivan. Harrison was 70 years old. Once upon a time, he believed in forever. Then forever left him. 10 years earlier, his wife had walked away after 40 years of marriage. Not because they fought, not because they hated each other. She had simply fallen in love with someone else. At least, that's what she said. The sentence had shattered something inside him, not his heart. Something deeper. His faith. Since then, life had become routine. Every morning was the same. Coffee. Newspaper. Walk with his old golden retriever, Charlie. A trip to the hardware store he owned. Dinner alone. Television. Sleep. Repeat. People thought he was fine. He laughed at jokes. He smiled at neighbors. He attended birthdays and weddings, but inside, he had quietly retired from hope. Or love belonged to younger people. That was what he told himself. Young people still believed in beginnings. At 70, life felt mostly like endings. Then one Saturday morning, he decided to visit a local book fair. A simple decision. An ordinary day. The kind of day that changes everything. Chapter 3. The book fair. Community center buzzed with conversation. Tables overflowed with books. Romance novels. Mysteries. Biographies. Cookbooks. Elena wandered through the aisles, running her fingers across old hardcovers. Books had always been her escape. They filled empty evenings. They carried her to places where loneliness couldn't follow. At the same moment, Ivan approached a display of classic novels. A worn copy of The Bridges of Madison County caught his eye. He reached for it. So did Elena. Their hands touched. Both immediately pulled back. "Oh, I'm sorry. No. Please, you saw it first." They looked at each other. Then smiled. Strange thing happened. The noise of the room seemed to fade. Not disappear. Just soften. As if the world had stepped back and given them a moment. Neither knew why. Neither understood what they felt. But both noticed it. And neither forgot it. The conversation lasted only 5 minutes. Yet, when they left the fair that afternoon, both carried home something more valuable than any book. A memory. Chapter 4. Coffee. On Monday, 3 days later, Ivan saw her again. At the same small cafe overlooking the town square. She sat alone reading. He almost walked away. Then he remembered something. At 70 years old, what exactly was he afraid of? Embarrassment, rejection, regret was worse. So he approached her table. Would you mind if I joined you? Elena looked up. Recognition lit her eyes. Not at all. What began as a 10-minute conversation became 4 hours. They spoke about books, children, travel, grief, the strange experience of growing older, the dreams they never fulfilled, the mistakes they still regretted. For the first time in years, neither watched the clock. When the cafe closed, the owner politely reminded them it was time to leave. They laughed outside. Neither wanted to say goodbye. Neither admitted it, but both felt it. Something had begun, something fragile, something beautiful, and something terrifying. Because after 60, falling in love feels less like flying and more like standing at the edge of a cliff, wondering whether your heart can survive one more leap. Chapter 5: A heart learning to beat again. Following weeks slipped by quietly. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became evening walks. Evening walks became habits neither wanted to break. Every morning, Elena found herself smiling for no reason. Every evening, she caught herself checking the clock, waiting. Not for television. Not for bedtime. For him. For years she had believed that part of her life was over. The part where a person's heart races because of a message. The part where a simple phone call can brighten an entire day. The part where tomorrow feels exciting. Apparently, she had been wrong. One afternoon, they walked beside the lake. The sky was painted with soft shades of gold and pink. Birds skimmed across the water. Neither spoke much. The silence between them had become comfortable. Warm. Safe. Their hands brushed accidentally. Elena pulled hers away, then immediately wished she hadn't. A second later, Ivan reached for it. Slowly. Carefully. As though asking permission. She looked at him. He looked at her. And without saying a word, their fingers intertwined. Neither laughed. Neither made a joke. Because both understood how significant that moment was. At 20. Holding hands feels ordinary. At 67 and 70. It feels like a miracle. That evening, Elena sat on her porch long after sunset. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years. And for the first time since Michael died, she allowed herself to imagine a future. Not a long future. Just a beautiful one. Chapter 6: The Children of Trouble began during Christmas. Her daughter, Sophie, arrived from Germany. Her son, Daniel, flew in from Canada. The house felt alive again. Laughter filled the rooms. Grandchildren ran through hallways. For a few days, Elena felt complete. Then someone noticed Ivan's photograph on the kitchen counter. The atmosphere changed immediately. "Who's that?" Sophie asked. Elena hesitated. "A friend." Her daughter exchanged a glance with Daniel. "What kind of friend?" The question sounded harmless. It was in single quotes. The dinner table suddenly felt smaller. Hotter. More uncomfortable. Elena took a breath. "The kind of friend I care about." Silence. Then Daniel spoke. "Mom, you're not serious, are you?" The words hit harder than he intended. "Why wouldn't I be?" Neither child answered immediately, because neither wanted to say what they were really thinking. Finally, Sophie whispered, "Dad hasn't even been gone that long. 7 years. 7 years. Yet somehow people expected widows to stop living forever." Elena felt anger rise inside her. Rare. Sharp. Necessary. Double quotes. "Your father is gone." The room became still. "I loved him for 43 years. Her voice trembled. "And I miss him every day." Tears filled her eyes. "But I'm still alive." Nobody spoke. "Do you understand what that means?" Her children looked away. "It means I still wake up every morning. It means I still feel lonely. It means my heart didn't die with him." The room remained silent, but something changed that night. For the first time, Elena stopped asking permission to be happy. Chapter 7: The woman from his past. 3 months later, someone knocked on Ivan's door. When he opened it, he felt the ground disappear beneath him. Linda. His ex-wife. 10 years older. Thinner. Fragile. Time had not been kind to her. Neither had life. For several seconds neither spoke. Finally she smiled softly. "Hello, Ivan." The sound of her voice dragged years back into the room. Years he thought were buried forever. "What are you doing here?" She looked away. I didn't know where else to go. The man she left him for was gone. Cancer. 2 years earlier. Her health was failing. Her savings were disappearing. Her confidence had vanished. And now she stood on his doorstep, carrying a lifetime of regret. Over coffee she spoke quietly, sometimes crying, sometimes apologizing. Sometimes simply staring at her hands. I hurt you, Ivan nodded. You did. I've spent years wishing I could change it. Neither knew what else to say. Because some wounds heal, but they never completely disappear. When she finally left, darkness had fallen. Ivan sat alone in his kitchen. His chest felt heavy. Not because he still loved her, but because ghosts had a way of reopening old scars. And he wasn't sure what this would mean for the life he was building with Elena. Chapter 8. Jealousy as nitrogen monoxide. Elena noticed the change immediately. The phone calls became shorter. The smiles became distracted. His eyes seemed farther away. At first she ignored it. Then she learned about Linda. A mutual friend mentioned seeing them together. Twice. Then 3 times. The information landed like ice water. Elena hated herself for what came next. Jealousy. She thought she was too old for jealousy. Apparently not, because every time she imagined Ivan sitting beside another woman, her stomach tightened. Every time she imagined them laughing together, she felt afraid. Not angry. Afraid. Feels different when you're young. When you're older, fear carries memory. Experience. Lost. One evening she finally asked him, "Are you seeing her?" Ivan froze. He knew exactly who she meant. She needed help. "That's not what I asked." The silence between them stretched painfully. And suddenly Elena realized something. She wasn't afraid of Linda. She was afraid of losing happiness after finding it again. And somehow, that was even worse. Chapter 9. The night they let go. Argument happened on a rainy Thursday. Neither had planned it. Neither wanted it. Yet both felt it coming. The storm outside rattled the windows of Eleanor's house. Inside, another storm was growing. Ivan stood near the fireplace. Elena stood by the kitchen counter. The distance between them was only a few feet. Yet it felt like miles. "You never told me," she came back. Her voice was calm. Calm. The kind of calm that hides pain. Ivan lowered his eyes. "I didn't know how." Elena laughed softly. Not because anything was funny, because she was hurt. "Do you know how many times people have said those words before breaking my trust?" Elena, no. Tears filled her eyes. "You don't get to say my name like that and make everything okay." The words cut deeply because they were true. For weeks she had been imagining conversations, imagining possibilities, imagining endings. Fear had poisoned every happy memory. Ivan took a step closer. "I wasn't hiding her." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Because he didn't have an answer. Not a good one. Not one that would heal the damage. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally Elena whispered, "Maybe we were a mistake." The sentence struck him harder than anything else. A mistake. Was that what she thought this had been? Months of laughter. Months of healing. Months of rediscovering life. A mistake. Ivan's chest tightened. Slowly, he nodded. Maybe arguing would only make things worse. Maybe she needed space. Maybe he did too. Maybe. It was the last thing he wanted to say. But it was all he had left. A few minutes later, he walked toward the front door. His hand rested on the handle. For a moment he almost turned around. Almost fought for her. Almost begged her not to let him leave. Instead, he whispered, "I don't regret a single day." Then he walked into the rain, and neither of them slept that night. Chapter 10. Winter. Without her, first snow arrived in January. Everything looked beautiful. Everything felt empty. Ivan had forgotten how lonely life could be. Or perhaps he had simply become spoiled, because loneliness after love is far worse than loneliness before it. Every street reminded him of her. Every cafe, every bench, every path around the lake. Charlie, his old dog, waited by the door every afternoon. As if expecting Elena to arrive. Sometimes Ivan caught himself reaching for the phone, then stopping, because pride is a cruel companion, and heartbreak an even crueler one. Meanwhile, Elena suffered. Though she never admitted it. She spent evenings pretending to read, pretending to watch television, pretending she was fine. The house felt larger than before, quieter, colder. One night, she found herself standing beside the lake. Snowflakes drifted across the frozen water, and suddenly she began to cry. Not because she hated Ivan. Not because she regretted loving him, because she missed him desperately. At 67 years old, she had discovered something unexpected. A broken heart hurts exactly the same as it does at 17. Chapter 1. 1 The letter February arrived. Grey. Cold. Endless. One morning Elena opened her mailbox. Among advertisements and bills sat a single envelope, handwritten. She recognized the handwriting instantly. Her hands trembled. For several minutes, she simply stared at it. Then she opened it. Inside was one sheet of paper. Nothing more. No poetry. No grand speech. Just honesty. The letter read, Elena, I spent months trying to convince myself that I could live without you. I was wrong. Life before you was quieter. Safer. Simpler. But it wasn't alive. You once told me that losing people taught you to fear love. Maybe losing people taught me to fear hope. Then you appeared, and somehow, after all these years, you made me believe again. I don't know what happens next. I don't know how much time either of us has left. What I do know is this: I love you. And if this is the last great love of my life, I want to spend it with you. Even. Double quotes. The letter slipped from her fingers. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Slowly. Silently. She read it again. Then again. And again. By evening, she had made her decision. Chapter 1. To the return. Next morning, she drove across town. Her heart pounded the entire way. Not because she was nervous, because she felt 20 years old. When she arrived, she sat in her car for several minutes, watching his house, watching the porch, watching the front door. Finally, she stepped out, walked to the gate. And knocked. A moment later, the door opened. Ivan appeared. For several seconds, neither moved, neither spoke, neither breathed. He looked older. She looked tired. Both looked heartbroken. Then Ivan smiled. The smallest smile. The most beautiful smile she had ever seen. You're late. A tear slipped down her cheek. How late? His eyes glistened. A lifetime. She laughed through tears, then crossed the distance between them, and wrapped her arms around him. He held her as if she might disappear. As if letting go would destroy him. For a long time neither spoke, because some moments are too important for words. Chapter 1. 3 The diagnosis. A year later, life felt peaceful again. Perhaps too peaceful. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Ivan's doctor wanted additional tests. Just precautionary. Nothing serious. At least that's what everyone said. A week later, he sat in a white office, listening to words he never wanted to hear. Heart disease. Surgery recommended. Risks involved. His age complicated everything. The doctor's voice continued, but Ivan barely listened. Because one thought repeated endlessly: not fear, not death. Elena. He thought about her laugh. Her hands. The way she looked at sunsets. The way she whispered his name when she thought he was asleep. For the first time in many years, death frightened him. Not because he wanted more time, because he wanted more time with her. That evening he told Elena everything. She listened quietly, then took his hand. Neither pretended to be brave. Neither pretended everything would be okay. Instead, she rested her forehead against his and whispered, whatever happens, you won't face it alone. Chapter 1. 4 The summer they stole back. Surgery was successful. Recovery was slow, but recovery happened. And when summer arrived, they made a decision. No more waiting. No more postponing life. No more saving happiness for later. They traveled. Not far, just enough. They visited small coastal towns, walked beaches at sunrise, danced awkwardly at outdoor concerts, shared ice cream, took photographs, held hands everywhere. People smiled when they saw them. Some stared. Neither cared. One evening they danced beneath string lights outside a small restaurant. A young woman nearby watched them, then whispered to her boyfriend, I hope we're like them someday. Elena heard it. So did Ivan. Neither said anything, but both smiled. Because perhaps surviving together was more beautiful than growing old. Chapter 15 Autumn Smells Like Jasmine. September arrived carrying golden leaves and cool mornings. One quiet afternoon, they sat together on the porch overlooking the lake. The world seemed slower, now gentler. The sunlight touched Eleanor's silver hair. A breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden. Ivan watched her. Really watched her. Every line on her face, every wrinkle, every memory time had written there. And suddenly he realized something. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever known, not despite her age. Because of it, every scar told a story. Every tear had shaped her. Every loss had made her stronger. He reached for her hand, lifted it gently, and kissed her fingers. She smiled. "What are you thinking about?" Ivan looked toward the lake, then back at her. "Do you know what autumn smells like?" She laughed softly. "What?" He squeezed her hand. "You." Her eyes filled with tears. Happy tears, the rarest kind. "And what do I smell like?" He smiled. "Like jasmine, like home, like every good thing that arrived after I stopped expecting it." She leaned her head against his shoulder. The lake shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. Neither knew how many years remained. Maybe 10, maybe 5. Maybe less. For the first time, it didn't matter. Because happiness isn't measured in years. It's measured in moments. And at that moment, sitting together beside the lake, they had everything. Epilogue. The greatest love story doesn't happen at 20. Sometimes it doesn't happen at 30. Or 40. Sometimes life waits. Sometimes it allows people to suffer. To lose. To heal. To learn what truly matters. And then, when they least expect it, love arrives. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But gently. Like autumn sunlight. Like the scent of jasmine on the wind. Like a hand reaching for yours after years of loneliness. And when it finally comes, you understand something beautiful. It was never too late. It was right on time.